right. Beautiful. We are live.
All right.
Well, welcome to another edition of Beyond the Binder. How are we doing, folks?
Fantastic. Thanks, Jason. How are you?
Really good.
Well, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Just okay. Well, in hospitality, you can't just be okay. It has to be fantastic. It's wonderful. We're excited to be here. Things like that.
Jazz hands? Do I need jazz hands?
No jazz hands in hospitality.
No jazz? That's right.
Keep them down. Keep them composed. No jazz hands.
I got a lot to learn about hospitality.
Unless you're in Italy, then you get the jazz, a little bit more excitement. But otherwise, we're going to keep it below the shoulders.
I got so much to learn. Well, you know what, Marion? I didn't ask you how to say your last name. Paturel?
Yeah, that works. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Meaning
it's
translation.
Fine.
Nope, you
French
missed it.
name, French last name. Yeah.
Well, Marion will be joining us today. This episode, Why Great Hotel Standards Don't Show Up on the Floor. And Marion, I've got an introduction for you. Correct me if any of this is wrong. Over 20 years of luxury hospitality experience?
That's right.
Most notably as Director of Global Learning and Development at Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts.
Yeah.
When she shaped learning and strategy across one of the world's most iconic hotel brands. Her journey spans properties from Paris to the Maldives, London to Toronto, giving her a rare global perspective on what it takes to develop people and sustain service excellence across cultures and continents. Today, Marion runs MCP Consult and works as a service coach with Academia. Is that how you say it? Academia du Service?
Yeah, that just shows up on LinkedIn somehow. It's like a consulting company that I do work with, but it's not necessarily a big part of what I do.
Oh, okay. Well,
but that works. It still helps describe exactly very well my background. Thank you, Jason.
Well, I'm not done. We're not done with you. So you also a chartered member of CIPD, an Institute of Hospitality Mentor?
That's right.
It's incredible.
Currently a training coach. And today we're going to dig into how standards actually translate to consistent execution on the floor, which is usually what we talk about, but from different perspectives.
Yeah.
And wow, what a career for you. Are you feeling it? Are you feeling like I'm a champion? I did it? Or you got
you have to be.
It's a journey. It's not a destination, right?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, but it's been wonderful. I feel like every time I talk to someone about my sort of professional journey, I always think what a great industry hospitality is. It is, allowing you to travel, meet people, learn different languages. I mean, my first sort of management and training I did at the Sofitel in New York, and I didn't speak English. And I was 20. So I arrived there and I didn't even know I was not on legal age to do anything. It was amazing. And I know very few industries that can give you that. So I'm very proud and to be part of the hospitality industry. And this is an industry I'm really passionate about.
Oh. It's just what I love about our industry the most is that there's a place for everyone. It truly is. We often talk about this, or I've often talked about this with places, is there is a place in this industry for those that want to discover the world. There is a place for those in this industry that want to climb a corporate and career ladder. Yeah. And there are places for those that want to stay and craft, and I should say, and hone their craft in a way that becomes memorable and relationship building. But there's also a place for people that are coming in and coming out, that are just like, hey, I need to step in here and I need to step out of here. Yeah. But I think why hospitality is able to be so versatile is it because of the principles and the concepts and the requirements that are required in order to do these roles are such transferable skills? Even though so many people don't view that, I think there's a lot of hoteliers that view themselves as a pigeonhole of like, oh, well, what would I do outside of hotels, or what would the transferable skills that this industry gives to to individuals is just, I want every hotelier to open your eyes. You are so employable, right? Like you're so like the
Yeah.
skills that you've learned are so amazing. But it's so great that gosh, transfer here to a new country and don't really even speak the language, but there's a shot for you. There's something here for you to do, and
Yeah.
and a meaningful career that came out of it.
I prefer to hire people who have been in the service industry for high school, college, because they know how to serve.
Mm.
Yeah.
And even in the corporate environment, you got to walk down the hall and you've got to, serve your teammate every now and then. And
Well, it's you gain an eye for things that you can never turn off. It's a blessing and a curse, really. And
You can never eat in a restaurant again.
ever. It's actually ruined. They're all restaurant. It's all
Why
ruined.
are you doing that?
Yeah, like it's fine. Oh, I love
Clearly
it.
did not attend the training.
Yeah, clearly not.
yeah. Not to digress, but the absolute worst is, and I've probably said this before, my wife went back to college when my two sons went to college, and I couldn't afford all three. So she was a shift manager at Starbucks, and they pay for your tuition. So she spent 3 years at Starbucks. I cannot go into a Starbucks with her because when she walks in, it is, this is wrong. This is wrong. She made that drink wrong. She's doing that wrong. He's doing that wrong. What is he doing over there? Did you see that over there? And I'm just going, God, just get some coffee.
But on the other side of it, you get the euphoric experience of being like, this was done perfect. Oh my gosh. The appreciation of expert delivery. Like when that happens, you can be like, hang on, do you realize what you just did? Do you realize how I can appreciate the technicality or the challenges that this
and also the empathy for people who work in those jobs, how sometimes you see customers or guests getting angry or impatient, and when you've been there on the other side, you know what it's like. So not to do that as well, to be kind to others.
Well, let's talk about delivery. Let's jump in, because I'm sure we could keep going.
We can go all
day. First question, Marion, how about this? You've designed global training programs for luxury hospitality brands. So why do so many of them fail to translate into consistent on the floor execution?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I used to call it the magic phone booth, which is, if training could turn everyone into, a really high performer, I think, training managers would be very rich. Like I would be very rich, but it's not the case, right? And I think training is part of a system. It's one thing that is part of performance, and it's not the whole thing. So oftentimes people are being sent, or employees, staff, team members are being sent to a training, and we think, done, they've been trained, that's fantastic. And actually that's really just the start. I don't know if you've ever heard, because you've had many wonderful guests on this on your Behind the Binder, of the 70-20-10, which is how people learn. So we usually say that people learn about 70% from experience. They learn about 20% from coaching and feedback, and only 10% from sort of formal training. So I think where it fails is making the link back to the real life. Like you have attended the training, now I'm going back into my department. Are those behavior skills that I've learned going to be expected on the floor? Am I going to get coaching and feedback and reinforcement daily to be able to practice and perfect those skills? And often I think that's the missing link.
I can attest to this as we look at properties that want to and create and define incredible experiences, I think that there often is this, okay, this is what we want, this is what we're hoping for, and we call this very often what is called this execution gap, which is saying I've got this definition of what we should be doing, and then what we actually tolerate or promote or allow to happen within our operation and organization. And I think that we can have the greatest, most expertly crafted, designed standards or training plans or anything like that, but if it doesn't translate into consistent feedback, if it doesn't translate into accountability, if it doesn't translate into observable moments that is recognizable for the team, for the guest, whatever it may be, it's wasted energy and effort, right? And so it does take this, like, okay, how do I transcend what you do, what you should do, to what you do? And I think that the majority of that comes from people like yourself. That why I could argue of why you're so successful is because you've also worked the front lines, you've also been there, you've serviced the industry. And I think that when we have operators that step into these leadership roles or these learning and development roles, they're able to bring this sense of like, okay, cool, now I'm a front desk manager. How do you expect me to do this? How do you expect my team to do this? I've got a line out the front door, and this guest just threw his soda at me. No one's doing that crazy stuff, but sometimes it happens, right? Like, how do I manage these like ideals that came out of this corporate think tank of what we should all be doing into this is what shows up on the floor every single day? And I think it takes the mind of the operator to look at those training programs as well, to say, look.
Absolutely. So it goes both ways. My first point was the assumption was that the training was actually relevant to the operations, right? To what they were doing. But there's the other side where, you're being made to attend training, and that happens sometimes, in bigger corporations where it's not necessarily relevant to your role, or it's not going to be explained in a way that you can sort of relate to it. So that's the other side of it, right? But if the training is relevant and it's been well designed and it's doing what it's supposed to do, but it's not translating into what you do day to day, it's not being reinforced, it's not being coached, then we go back and we say, oh, that's because the training didn't work. But really, and we know in our industry how tight for time everyone is, right? And sending someone to training is a huge investment. It's like, being in hotels, being in learning and development, I'd have to beg, my department, please send them in for training. I'll make it short, or how can we make it work? How we can break it down? And they're like, I really need them on the floor. So, if we're making that investment to send someone to training, it's going to be worth it.
I'm really interested in your thought. Well, let's start with this, if I can. I know, Jason, you've got us all hopefully on time, but Marion, could you remind for the people that are listening and that will be listening, what that 70% number was?
Experience. So you learn about 70% from experience.
And so when we say, like, if this is really about experience, how are we then connecting this training as quickly as possible into a scenario? And absolutely. I think that when we look at training, if we're really going to be effective at training, is we're going to say, I need to put you in a scenario or give you the opportunity to experience this as soon as possible. Whether it's a simulation, meaning it's a role play environment where the front desk, it's like, hey, I'm going to come out of the training room and I'm going to go back down to my department and we're going to role play through the scenario, or I can give you a real life example of why this is going to happen and help you attach, like, oh, this person's asking a question about this training that I just got, and be able to pull that into those real life
100%.
They can acknowledge it and say, oh my gosh. And so it is, how do leaders pull in to create or create these experiential moments where the training can actually sink in. And I think that that's going to be different for every hotel. But
And it's really making them sure that you get value out of the training. Like, let's say, they've attended something on service recovery, then, in the next shift briefing and throughout, like, how do we keep on talking about, I don't know, maybe the 4-step methodology, doing, role plays on how you practice that, then observing, empowering your team to resolve issues and observing them in the moment, giving them feedback on how they've handled it. And that's really how the learning is going to happen and how it's going to stick.
And I think that the best hotels that have a training plan that say, great, here's what we learned, here's what we're training on, and here's an example of this in real life. Like, this is when you interact with the next guest or the next time you are delivering this thing, this is why this is important. So it doesn't just become this formal that, the last percent that you were talking about is the last of like, oh, okay, this is like the textbook thing. No, I've got to get into it. I've got to look at it. I like to use this phrase of we need to know how it looks, sounds, and feels. And once we can understand look, sounds, and feels, we can execute well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you both have probably seen a lot of box ticking.
The motions. Check.
Why is it so persistent, do you think?
Maybe because it's easier.
Don't name names, Adam.
I don't know if you just saw me bite my lips and tongues. No.
Yeah, maybe because it's easier to tick the box. Like, I feel like sometimes doing the things that we're told to do without necessarily truly internalizing them or understanding them or understanding why we're doing them, is sometimes the trap that, I see we might be falling into. Like, an example of that is doing a standards test, which is always my favorite thing. There's some, companies, a larger, hotel company, especially in the luxury hotel industry, they will have these requirements for, staff members to receive standards tests on a regular basis. And so that becomes a requirement. So, there might be a requirement that each, team member receives 2 tests per month. And, when you put that requirement, they will be, an element, or you can fall into the trap of just ticking the box, which is like, right, oh no, it's the end of the month, I haven't done my standards test. Let's quickly do a role play, or let's observe and just, tick a few boxes and then put it into the system so it can look good on paper. But the actual purpose of a standards test is an opportunity to have a feedback conversation, to, first of all, recognize, the team member for everything that they've done well, so they can do more of that in the future, and to maybe give them some pointers, areas where, they can possibly do differently. So it's only sort of a mean to an end. It's not, I think we're ticking the box when we're using all of these tools just to say, done, done, done. It's the same with training, right? You attended the training, done, done, done. But if we're not reinforcing it or translating it into real life, then it's just it's a bit of a pointless exercise, if that makes sense.
It becomes so pointless. And I think, to build onto that is saying, I think it comes back to, unfortunately, my droning on about competence and confidence. I think that when the team members and associates and employees, however we look at this, is saying, when we haven't built competence, when people are worried about, am I doing the step? Am I doing the thing? Did I get the credit card? Did I get the, order right? Did I repeat it back? Where does the fork go? What we end up happening is we have very transactionally focused people, because they are going through their brain, okay, I did all the things that you asked me to do, which I think is it's the bitter end, or the sharp point to standards, is when done wrong. And I genuinely mean, when done wrong, standards turn into weapons. They turn into bitter moments of people saying, well, I did what you asked me to do. I did the thing. And
Yeah.
what that does is it says, like, congratulations, you've mastered competence, or you're getting the competence. But what we've never really moved on to is the confidence.
Yeah.
And competence must build our confidence. And it must be that standards cannot become chains. They cannot become weapons. They must become wings, so to speak. They must become stepping stones, safe lit paths of saying, look, I'm going to help you have an amazing guest interaction. I'm going to make sure that when the guest walks away from your service, they're going to think and feel, wow, that person was great. Did you feel that? Like, they were so engaged. I love the service. And they're doing that because of the standards delivery, of how you executed it. And when we have confidence and we're able to deliver a genuine sense of authenticity to our, within our service, it's because we have mastered competence. You cannot roll out and deliver exceptional service on any luxury level, economy service, whatever. On any level, you cannot deliver excellence or consistency without competence.
Yeah.
And I think where this fails to translate for us truly comes down into leadership. It says to the leaders, when I say that the leader is telling me, like, oh, I just have a bunch of box checkers, which happens all the time. I hear this. It's like, cool. I'm really sorry to say this, but it's you. And how are you rewarding? How are you coaching? How are you guiding your team? Because what you're doing is you're rewarding the action and not the behavior. And we need to reward the behavior. We need to acknowledge, wow, you really made that guest feel seen. You did that through using their name. You did that through,
that's the why.
Yes, like Simon Sinek, like let's go, let's get to the why. When you think like, Will Gadara, and you're thinking unreasonable hospitality, you don't get to those levels without extreme competence, without being able to effectively deliver on excellence.
Yeah.
But if that's where you stop, if you stop and you just are focusing on the task, you're missing the beauty that's our hospitality industry, which is the
absolutely. Yeah, it becomes a box checking and box ticking, and then you're just really not understanding why, because those are just really guardrails, they're just pointers. They're things like, I used to compare it to, like, McDonald's, when you are Coca-Cola, you just want, your Coca-Cola to be the same, taste the same, and, be the same every time when you open it. And that's just a foundation, and that's, for luxury hospitality, there are standards that are just the foundations, they just must be there. It's the base of, like, good service, of technical excellence, of everything. But that's just the starting point, right? And they're here for a reason, not just to be ticked. They're here because, if we're using the guest name, we're going to make them feel like, feel valued, feel seen, feel like they're not a number, and we're personalizing their experience. So when we tick the box, which, I have seen, for example, with name usage, where you have someone who says, hello, Mrs. Paturel, how are you today, Mrs. Paturel? It's so great to see you, Mrs. Paturel. And you're like, whoa,
wow,
you're hitting your standard.
Name usage, way to go.
Nailed it.
Right? But did we achieve a greater guest experience by using the standards? Probably no. It's where sometimes there's a disconnect, right? It's like these standards were meant to enhance the experience, not
yes. And we have to understand,
make it robotic.
What is this mapped to? What is this service or the standard mapped to? And back to the experience point, can I map this experience, this training, to an outcome, a product, or whatever it is? And I could also argue that I think that it also requires you to, as the deliverer, to have a sense of satisfaction as well in the service that you're offering. Like, if you're miserable and you're having a terrible day, you can't really do anything but check the box. But when you're happy at work, when you're, satisfied, I think you're able to deliver really, really well. And that's really the focus. Are you enabled? Are you sitting there and have the leaders created an environment where excellence can be achieved?
Yeah.
So you're kind of walking into my next question. What do you think it actually takes to turn standards into daily habits across shifts and teams and properties and things like that?
It's a whole system, but I always talk about how it's not one thing. If there was one thing, we'd all be doing it. It's a little bit similar to the question for me about how do you become healthy? There is sleeping, there's stress management, there is eating, there is exercise, all these kind of stuff. And it's a bit, it's something that I feel is similar when it comes to service excellence. Is sort of everyone looking in the same direction. So there's obviously the training and the daily reinforcement, but there's also the teams have the tools and equipments that they need to be doing their job. There is the leadership element, and it's huge, and we can go into a whole conversation about that. The floor leadership and the leadership in general, like how are the leaders behaving in a way that enables or that hinders the delivery of great service experiences. And then obviously everything that we talked about around learning, which is are we giving feedback? But that doesn't mean only constructive feedback. It also means reinforcement, so that we can really promote the behaviors that we want to see again, and coach coach team members to improve their service skills.
There's so much in there. There's so much where you're like, okay, what is this, right? Like, what is it that we're going to do? And I think really when it comes down to it, it's this phrase that I use, which is consistency is our quality. Are we dead focused on the bullseye? And are we doing there? It's such a I'm going to sound like a hypocrite in these two sayings, right? Of like, you got to focus on the things and do all this. But there's also this like understanding about skiing in the woods, right? I don't know if a lot of people have heard about this, that if you focus on the trees and you're trying not to hit the trees, you'll hit the trees, right? Like, you're going to hit what you look at. So look past the trees, look at the path, follow that, and you're going to be okay. It's okay to ski through the trees. And so I think that it's both, right? It's saying, we have to be consistent. We have to know where we're going. We have to be focused on what we're trying to hit. And also, when we're doing this, can we focus far enough down that we can start building a consistency, and we can build the why, we can build all of these things. And I think you're just nailing it here, Marion, as expected, right? Of like, how do we create that consistency, and how are these leaders showing up and putting that exercise and that practice into putting that practice in place every single day, every single shift, every single moment of saying, look, this isn't winning the big prize. This is learning the skill.
Yeah, and it's kind of relentless. It's a relentless focus. It's not something that is, on Monday we're going to talk about great service. It's how we are, how you like live at work is all around this, right? So all the messages that you deliver at your shift briefings, your departmental meetings, the trainings that the teams are attending, the onboarding, the all the culture around it, the events, like everything is around that service excellence, whether it's for staff to experience it for themselves or delivering it for other people. It's a whole culture that is in place around service excellence. You were talking earlier about, the fact that it's got to be from the inside out, right? Or it comes from leaders. Like if you're not, if you have a leader who is, comes in and is really stressed and is, micromanaging and stressing you out, you're going to be all, worried and fearful, and you won't have any space to think, and you're just going to maybe be ticking the box, or you might even miss some of your standards, and that's not going to lead to a great guest experience. So it's really that chain of event of, how are leaders behaving that allows employees to behave in a certain way that then creates that great guest experience.
I know that this is off, but I would love to get maybe your take on this. Do you ever feel that the transient nature of our business, the fact that people do come in, they're there for a year, they're there for 2 years, and then they get promoted, they move, they make their stamp, they do their thing. Do you ever think that hinders the process of trying to create consistent quality and experiences where these you have some of these legacy employees that have been here for, okay, this is the new manager, what are you going to create? Like what's going to be the thing that you do that then the next manager comes in and is like, what is this? Why are we doing this? Like, do you ever feel like that might have an effect, or how do you think we mitigate that as an industry?
You
I know that
mean
that's
the transient staff members or transient leaders?
leadership, yeah, that leaders are often transferring so often within our industry, right? Especially in luxury. I mean, 2 to 3 years, next, you're clogging up the pipeline, kind of thing, right? So
Yeah.
you're constantly moving, and I've been wondering lately about, what does that
Whether
inconsistency then trickle down into maybe our more permanent staff members that are seeing this inconsistent delivery, and if it's not rooted in the purpose of the property and the brand, right? I think one thing that Four Seasons did very, very well early on as it was scaling is it was very easy to say to a new hire, well, that's not very Four Seasons. I don't know if you've ever know that. That's not very Four Seasons. And you almost couldn't necessarily define that because it just was, I don't know, it wasn't
yeah,
it
it was
wasn't
the
it.
culture.
It wasn't right. And so I think like the culture of a business can help offset that transience of places. But I think
Exactly.
properties have their own I think their properties have their own cultures and brands have their own cultures. But if we're not cultivating that, I don't know.
Yeah, it's what everything stands on, really. So this culture element that might be different from company to company to property is just such an important foundation because it helps everyone look in the same direction. So I think it will help, I guess, minimize the wave of new leaders coming in, because when a new leader joins the team, they will be inevitably there will be changes, there will be things that are done differently, and that's just going to be sort of part of it and the nature of it. But there needs to be some consistency around how we behave to enable that great service, which is the part that if it's not rooted in culture, can be really disruptive for teams. Yeah.
Absolutely.
When you walk into a hotel and you see a lot of inconsistency, I mean, you know it when you see it.
Mm.
What's the first thing that you would address if you were consulting or managing? I mean, is it people? Is it training? Is it leadership? Is it lack of a system? Or we're going all the way back to what you said earlier. It's all of it.
Yeah. So it's usually a little bit. It's never usually one factor, right? It's often several things. There's several things that usually I look at. The first one is around performance expectations, and I think you had an episode a few weeks ago with Jen Burgess, and she talked about if you ask people how to make an iced tea, you're going to get 20 different response, right? About how you place the
100%.
lemon, what straw you use, what glass you use, etc., etc. So that made me laugh. But do we know what good looks like? Like, are we really clear? Yeah. So performance expectation is a really big thing. And oftentimes for me, that was the big thing, being in a training role, when people would come to me and be like, we need training for this. I'd be like, do we know what we want people to do? Because that, it starts here, right? And it starts, that reinforcement piece after the training. If you don't know what good looks like, then you can't reinforce, or you can't translate into the floor. So that's the first element. The second is like, the smaller things like processes. Do we have the right process, in place? Sometimes you can say like, the way we deliver service, like the steps of service might not, be conducive to a great guest experience, or it might not, it might be difficult for an employee to execute. So that just creates some inconsistencies. It could come from that. It could also be that team members don't have the right tools or the right equipment, the right systems in order to deliver their work. Like it could be, oh, you're asking me to use the guest name, but it takes me like 8 clicks to go into the system to find who they are. So it becomes really clunky. So there could be an element of that. But I would say sort of the biggest element that we talked about is leadership and culture, right? So coming back to the way we are behaving as leaders, is it enabling or is it hindering service delivery? Yeah.
It's like back to, man, there's a million things, right? Like a million what it is. But I think, man, you hit on it so good right there, of just right there in the beginning is where I want to circle back to, actually, which is it defined? It starts with the clarity of,
Yes.
do you even know? Do you even know, the leader, what is acceptable?
Because sometimes we assume, right, leaders will know.
Yeah, we assume,
outside,
okay,
right?
this leader knows what this is. Or again, I'll go back to just the nature of our industry. What was good at this property is not the same as what is good at this next property. I mean, you worked at the George Sank, you worked at Maldives. The service experience is completely different. Same brand, like still Four Seasons, totally different. If you offered George Sank service at the Maldives, they'd look at you like you had 3 heads, right? Or it might feel off. Maybe it might not look at you crazy. There would be an element of difference. And do we know that? Are we coaching that? Are we helping our teams understand what does the good look like here? What's the excellence look like here? It's great that you have a past. It's great that you have a history. It's great that Jason, before you were talking about your wife working at Starbucks, but hey, this is Caribou. We do it differently here. And that's okay, because that's what's expected. That's the expectation. But if we don't start with the expectation, we'll never be able to close that execution gap. We'll never be able to do anything, because I think that happens. So when I go into a hotel and I see that service is lacking, the first thing that I always say is, there's not clear enough expectations here.
Yeah, and it's oftentimes you'll have teams, that are large teams. So they have several managers.
Yes.
And several, sometimes supervisors, assistant managers, department head. And so it's only one manager that has got to agree on what good looks like. They've all got to agree, because then it becomes, when we work with Adam on a shift, he expects this. But when we work with, Jason, he says this. And then that, obviously creates the inconsistencies, but also is very confusing and frustrating for staff members. Yeah.
Well, and you also have then different levels of accountability, right? Well, okay, when Marion's working, I can get away with this. When Jason's working, I can get away with this. Oh, but when Adam's working, I can't get away with anything. And I think that when we look to our operations, we genuinely have to say, hang on, from a leadership perspective, are we all on the same page? Are we all singing the same song? Great. Now we can harmonize, right? Like, at least we're all singing the same tune here. Then it comes down to, okay, are we now being consistent in our leadership? Are we being consistent in the expectations? We've just walked out of this amazing training. And then do I have a manager that immediately on the floor is like, oh yeah, you don't need to do that. Or, yeah, that's really nice, but we're busy today. I mean, how many times have you heard that? But we're busy. Or, but this is a VIP. Or, oh, that's really only done in this case. And it's just like, hang on. No, consistency means consistency. Delivery is delivery, no matter what, right? And so I think that comes down to, have we truly accepted the definition of excellence or consistency or whatever it may be? And I think that we see a lot of properties do that right. I think that there's a lot of places that are able to walk out of these trainings, or they're able to walk out of service excellence, and they're able to say, no, this is what this looks like. And I think that the best hotels or the best properties that do this are the ones that are giving the positive feedback, the ones that are taking the time to stop and say, I love the way you did this, or oh my gosh, call out here. I was just at the Ritz-Carlton in Naples, and I was sitting outside trying to enjoy a sunset dinner out on their little bar out there, and the host came and asked me, do you want to sit outside? I've got a place looking right at the sunset. Like, wow. And I was like, I would love to, but I forgot my sunglasses, and I do not want to stare at the sun as it's going down, because I'm going to look at it like this. And the host said, well, I'd love to fix that for you, and pulls out this set of sunglasses that clearly the restaurant bought and said, here you go. Here's a pair of sunglasses. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can do that. And I know that host got that praise. I know that host got, hey, you had the tools, you had the training, we bought the stuff, but you did it. Like, you executed it and you made that guest stay. I reported it all the way back, and I've been thinking about it for as long as I can. But when we can circle back and we can say, oh my gosh, back to your in practice, 70%, you did it, and look at how successful you've done it here. And I think that there is something where we have to stop and say, good job, more than we say that on you.
Positive reinforcement is so important, and it's often, I would say, where we fall behind. I'm like, I will raise my hand for this one. I'm terrible. I always see the flaws, the problems. I guess that's why I get paid for it.
Right, you have the eyes.
We have a negativity like bias as human beings. It's just we will see what didn't work well, but there is a sort of, in the science of giving feedback, we usually talk about the 5-to-1 ratio. I don't know if you've heard that before.
Yes.
Every piece of constructive feedback, you need to give 5 positive reinforcement, and that's also how you build trust. So this would be sort of a top tip for any leaders out there that is managing a team is, don't go straight for the constructive feedback before you have built the foundations of positive reinforcement, because not only does it build confidence for the person and they know exactly what they need to repeat, but also, it really helps with, engagement, with trust within the team and trust in leadership. And that's so important. If I had to choose, you were told, you can never, ever use one type of feedback in your life, I would definitely choose the positive reinforcement over the constructive feedback, because this is so powerful. If it's done, obviously, it's got to be 2 things: sincere and specific.
Thank you.
Obviously, it's got to come from the heart. It can't be like, oh, something that you feel somebody's just trying to, give you a piece of positive feedback, but doesn't really mean it. And it's got to be really specific, like not just good job, like specifically calling out what it was that made it good, because you want the person to be able to do more of that in the future. And I think when we build on people's strengths, you were talking about that competence versus confidence, that's the confidence really is boosted, and that's really invaluable. Yeah,
and as we boost confidence, our competence goes up, because we're like, okay, like, how do I do this better? How do I get there?
100%. No, but I love that. And I love, what we talked about earlier of like the standard versus the human connection, and all of like, how do you train each, and how do they interact with each other? Like when I was in hotel school, and the sort of first week we were in, we had a practice restaurant. So we had to learn service. And it was really white gloves with like big silver trays and cloches, and I was in my high heels and suit, and it was just all really uncomfortable. I was just out of high school, and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? And I was so stressed about the technical standards, right? I was like, oh, if I mess up opening that bottle of wine in front of the guests, or if I pour, a drop of the red wine on the beautiful, clean white tablecloth, or, if I just, clear and the cutlery fall off, so I was so focused on all the technical elements of learning. And so probably for the first few weeks, I didn't have a clue who was sitting there. It could have been anyone. They could have had aliens' heads on. I was just like, oh my God, don't drop this plane, or don't like. So until you're so like, this becomes second nature. Your standards become second nature. You don't have to think about them because you've done them so many times. Then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's people.
Oh, there's a human in front of me. Happy birthday. Wow.
They're having for a birthday, or, they're having a day night, or like whatever that might be. And you're like, oh, so all of a sudden your brain frees up some space for that second element, which is where the magic happens, right? That's the unscripted part. Yeah.
Everything. It's where authenticity shows up, which is arguably, which is where hospitality shows. Before that, it's just service. After that is hospitality. That's really where it shines.
Yeah.
I can't agree with that enough. And I think that when we look at our industry, it is helping people build the confidence and competence, well, competence and then confidence, in order to say, look, these are real people sitting in front of you. It's great. And I think the best service I've ever experienced are the ones that are able to move through the necessary emotions that are required, that set the base of the expectation so that I can experience the incredible sense of humanity, right? And again, I don't want anyone to think that this is exclusive to luxury. This is required at every level of our industry, whether you're whether you're a barista, whether you're at a simple hotel or motel, or you're delivering a Forbes 5-star experience. It all comes down to, does it feel authentic and genuine and sincere? And is it specific to me as the guest or me as the employee? Can I deliver it?
Yeah. And to, coming back on this idea that, your brain or your headspace is taken by your technical standards, and until you've mastered those, it's harder to do the sort of emotional intelligence side of thing. It's exactly the same as leadership. If your leader is creating fear, or if there's no trust within the team, your brain is going to be focused on surviving. And in our industry, when we're trying to create those moments where people feel valued, if my brain is taken on like, oh, I shouldn't mess up because I'm going to get yelled at, or, I'm whatever that might be, then you're never going to be able to deliver those experiences that are,
Amen. I'm going to say this one last thing, because we could keep going for forever, but I think I had a really great, when I was in hotel school at UNLV, little plug there.
Nice.
Loved it. Loved my hotel school. I had a really great chef that said something that has stuck with me for a very long time, which is, if you want to cut all these vegetables and have everything, you need to have a really sharp knife. And if you have a really sharp knife, the same knife is going to be the same thing that will cut your finger off, right? Like, it's the same thing that will hurt you and do that. And so you have to do this, but you need this sharp knife in order to do your job. Don't let it do the job that it's not intended to do, and focus that it's doing the job that you need it to. And he pulls out this thing, which is like, any hotelier that thinks that they can operate without standards is a chef trying to prepare meals without a knife. Like, you cannot do it because you're afraid of being cut, right? Because there's this idea of like, oh no, standards can create robotics, standards can create this. Yes, just like a knife can cut you. But if you don't have that tool, if you do not have standards, if you do not have training, if you do not have these things in place, you cannot be successful in this industry.
Yeah.
Period. Not sustainably, maybe here and there, but you will not create a sustainable experience. You will not create a repeatable experience. Onboarding will become a nightmare. And so they are, I don't even want to call them a necessary evil. They are the necessary foundations that we can't become too obsessed over, that we have to be transcendent over. But if they're not clear, if they're not well laid.
Yeah. And that's the hard part, because they're not the be all and end all, but they are so important, and they're quite, it takes time to train and to be consistent with them. So it's like that balance.
It is, right? Well, gosh, how are people going to get in touch with you? This is amazing. So let's take it just a minute. If someone's like, gosh, I really want to get better at my service, and I think I'd like to have someone that led the global 4 seasons training and development on my team, how are they going to get a hold of you?
Well, thank you. Well, on LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn, really easily findable. And, I also have my email address, which is marion.paturel@mcpconsults.org. So if anybody wants to reach out either on LinkedIn or my email, that would be the best ways.
Yeah. And I think with your permission, we'll send your contact out and include that in the newsletter that we send out. That would be great.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks so much for having me.
We'd love it.
Fantastic conversation again. I learned stuff. I don't have a history of hospitality, so I learn stuff all the time.
Fresh meat. That's what we call it, Jason.
Fresh
Fresh
meat.
It's
I
full,
did- I
it's
did-
full of hotels.
Yeah. I've told Adam I waited tables. I was horrible at it. I'm not a service person. My wife is the quintessential. Adam, she loved the dinner we had the other day. That took
Oh.
her back to, it's kind of like what Marion was talking about in college. My wife put herself through school as a service captain in 5-star restaurants here in Houston.
Wow.
And we had a fantastic dinner the other day in Monterey with the Yippee executive team, and she was in heaven.
I mean, a 5-course tasting menu never hurts anybody, and it's always great to see. It's always great to be on the receiving end of excellence. I think that when you get an opportunity to truly receive somebody's heartfelt attempt of hospitality, there's nothing like it in the world.
They were so good.
So good.
And it's so rare, right? So
Yes.
I mean,
in our world where we're all distracted and we've got a million things going on, like you said, it's not only luxury hospitality, right? You can those moments can happen anytime in your day.
plug for Monterey Plaza Hotel and Suites. From the valet to the front desk to both restaurants to the housekeepers passing you in the hallway. I mean, it just felt very seamless, effortless, enjoyable. You just went the extra mile.
That's amazing. I bet they're having a great employee experience. I bet they're really engaged. I bet they're really happy. I had an awful experience recently with an airline. But the first thing I thought is, oh my gosh, they must just be treated so badly.
Yeah, and you can tell there's a correlation. There's a correlation.
Right? I had a GM when I was a learning manager who would come to every single employee onboarding, and we had just opened a hotel, so we had a lot of onboarding and we had a lot of new people coming in every week, and he would be there on the whole first morning of every single 3-day program, and he would know every single employee by name, and he would know their background and everything they'd done, and he was setting the tone right from the start, right? And making them feel valued. And we wanted them to use the guest name while they, the GM knew their names on day one without having to introduce themselves, right? And that, always stayed with me. It's like, we need to walk the talk.
Yes, we got to do it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Marion, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was really enjoyable. I could keep going for hours, as you can tell.
We can keep going. Round 2. We'll come back. We'll have you back again.
We'll bring you back for sure.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Well, we'll talk again soon.
All right.
Bye.